Fear is a known tactic used by totalitarian governments to control the population. Hey everybody, I'm Bill, the Hill Country Prepper, and I want you to be informed so that you can be prepared. Here's the headline out of Texas. San Antonio. The Department of State Health Services has requested 5 mortuary trailers to set up in Bexar County. Now this is in response to a surge in the Delta variant being reported around the state. And the issue is, many people are not getting the vaccination. In San Antonio, the African American population and the Hispanic population, their numbers of people that are getting the vaccination are really, really low. Now here's the story that's being reported. Authorities with the state health department submitted their request to the Federal Emergency Management Agency through the Texas Division of Emergency Management earlier this month. Quote, FEMA indicated they will be delivered in the next week or 2 weeks, a statement from DSHS states. That's the mortuary trailers we're talking about. The 5 trailers would be staged in San Antonio to meet any demands across the state. No local jurisdictions have requested the trailers at this point. Now they're not being requested, but they're going to put them in place anyway. I guess it's to create a visual. Okay, it's an optic. They're going to have these mortuary trailers in San Antonio for people to see, so you better get the vaccine, I guess, right? What this sounds like is a fear tactic. Now certainly, the Western governments, and certainly not the state of Texas, would be going so low as to use fear tactics to get people to comply. Would they? No. That stuff happens in communist countries like China and North Korea and Iran, certainly not in the United States. Don't believe me? Here's a headline from the Daily Telegraph in the UK, and this is from May earlier this year. Here's the headline. Admission. Use of fear to control public in pandemic was totalitarian. That's the headline. Scientists on a committee that encouraged the use of fear to control people's behavior during the COVID pandemic have admitted its work was unethical and totalitarian. Members of the Scientific Pandemic Influenza Group on Behavior, otherwise known as the SPI-B, expressed regret about the tactics in a new book about the role of psychology in the government's COVID-19 response. The SPI-B warned in March last year that ministers needed to increase the perceived level of personal threat from COVID-19 because, quote, a substantial number of people still did not feel sufficiently personally threatened. Now, Gavin Morgan, a psychologist on the team, said, clearly, using fear as a means of control is not ethical. Using fear smacks of totalitarianism. It's not an ethical stance for any modern government. By nature, I am an optimistic person, but all this has given me a more pessimistic view of people. My comment is, it's not the people he should be pessimistic of, but the ruling party. It goes on. Mr. Morgan spoke to author Laura Dodsworth, who has spent a year investigating the government's tactics for her book, A State of Fear. Now, I haven't read this book, but I certainly will look into it, and I suggest you do as well. Hey guys, if you're getting information out of this, why don't you press down on that thumbs up and give me a like? And if you're not a subscriber yet, why not? Subscribe right now. And if you hit that notification bell, you'll get notified each and every time I upload some new content, so do that right now. The story goes on. Ministers have faced repeated accusations that they ramped up the threat from the pandemic to justify lockdowns and coerce the public into abiding by them, a claim that will be examined by the forthcoming public inquiry into the pandemic response. One SPI-B scientist told Ms. Dodsworth, in March of 2020, the government was very worried about compliance and they thought people wouldn't want to be locked down. No kidding. There were discussions about fear being needed to encourage compliance, and decisions were made about how to ramp up the fear. The way we have used fear is dystopian. The use of fear has definitely been ethically questionable. It's been like a weird experiment. Ultimately, it backfired because people became too scared. Another SPI-B member said, quote, "You could call psychology mind control. That's what we do. Clearly, we try and go about it in a positive way, but it has been used nefariously." One warned that people use the pandemic to grab power and drive through things that wouldn't happen otherwise. We have to be very careful about the authoritarianism that is creeping in. Sounds like that person understands what's going on at least, right? Another said, without a vaccine, and remember this was before the vaccine was released, this is from last year, without a vaccine, psychology is your main weapon. Psychology has to have a really good epidemic, actually. Story goes on. As well as overt warnings about the danger of the virus, the government has been accused of feeding the public a non-stop diet of bad news, such as deaths and hospitalizations, without ever putting the figures in context with news of how many people have recovered, or whether daily death tolls are above or below seasonal averages. Now, I think that's important. That's an important statistic to have. Another member of the SPI-B said they were stunned by the weaponization of behavioral psychology during the pandemic, and that psychologists didn't seem to notice when it stopped being altruistic and became manipulative. They have too much power and it intoxicates them. Steve Baker, who's the deputy chairman of the COVID recovery group of Tory MPs, said, if it is true that the state took the decision to terrify the public to get compliance with rules, that raises extremely serious questions about the type of society we want to become. If we're being really honest, do I fear that the government policy today is playing into the roots of totalitarianism? He says, yes, of course it is. Now guys, if you don't know this information, you're ignorant of the facts. And I don't mean ignorant in a bad way. I'm not calling names. I'm ignorant of quantum physics. That's just a fact. But I don't want you to be ignorant. I want you to be informed so that you can be prepared. Guys, want to get this information out to you? I think it's really important. Please like and share this video. You guys have a blessed day. Thanks.